For the viewers of Shanti Niwas Charitable Trust, Sabka Saath Hai program is going into another week. And as we come to the end of this week, we are already in the month of May. Lockdown 3 should end soon, hopefully. We're always going to bring some interesting and very informative interviews for you all. आप सबके लिए कुछ अलग करने की कोशिश शांति निवास करता रहता है. कल के कुकिंग शो की काफी अच्छी रिस्पॉन्स आई हुई है और आज कुछ और हमारे साथ पेश करने वाले हैं. हमारे साथ नीलिमा जी हैं, कृष्ण स्वामी जी हैं, वीरेंद्र जी हैं और ऑफ कोर्स डॉक्टर संध्या रामनाथन जी भी है. तो नीलिमा जी, सबसे पहले आज के प्रोग्राम में हम क्या करने वाले हैं?
Okay, thank you, Hemanji. And first of all, welcome to Dr. Sandhya. I think this is the first time, Doctor, you're connecting with Shanti Niwas. So, welcome.
Oh, my pleasure.
And
my
we really
pleasure.
appreciate. I know
me.
how busy you are, and thank you so much.
Not at all. Always have time for this. I love it.
I know. And before I start, I just want to say a big thank you to the doctors and all your teammates and in the front line who are doing a wonderful job looking after all of us in New Zealand. I think it is really, really commendable, and I think we all need to give a big round of applause to our
Thank you so much. But I think everybody deserves the round of applause here, and yeah, because it's all like just our Prime Minister says, it's a team of 5 million.
Yes.
Actually, the most important thing is a very good leader that's listening to medical experts. So the medical community is very happy here that our voices have been heard.
And Sandhya, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your family?
Yeah, so I'm actually originally, my parents are from Delhi and UP. My father migrated to Australia when I was only 3 months old. And his name's Vijay Singhal. He's an engineer and he worked for the Coca-Cola company for 14 years. I have an older sister, Dr. Divya Sharma. She's an anaesthetist in Perth, and I have a younger sister who lives in Sydney. And my parents also live in Sydney, and I grew up and studied in Sydney, and I did my medical school at the University of New South Wales. And after graduating from there, I did my internship at Westmead Hospital and eventually trained as a GP in Australia. And while I was training at Westmead Hospital, I met my husband, and he's Dr. Sandhya Ramanathan, and he's a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he was just starting out his training at that time. And from there, after getting married and finishing both of our trainings, we went off to America for 18 months, where my husband did a fellowship at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. And then we had 6 months in New York at Mount Sinai Hospital. And while we were in Boston, he got called for an interview to join at Green Lane Hospital for a 1-year locum. And so we cut short our job in New York and came to New Zealand in January 2008 for 1 year. My daughter was 3.5 and my son was 2. And I had never been to New Zealand before we came here in 2008, January. And here we are, 12 years later, still here. And happily Kiwi.
Yeah, I know. You look quite young for all this long journey.
Yeah, well, so now my daughter is 15, and
oh wow,
she's turning 16 later this month, and my son is 14 and a half, and my daughter is in year 12 at St. Cuthbert's, and my son is in year 10 at King's College, and they're both doing online school, and obviously my husband is sort of working at the hospital because cardiac surgery is considered a lot of the cases are emergencies still, so he still operated during the lockdown, but obviously the numbers were less than what he normally does. And I work initially for the first 6 years we were here, I worked at Mount Roskill Medical Centre, and then in 2014 I shifted to Surrey Medical Centre with Dr. Vallabh Chunilal and Dr. Sandhya Chunilal. So quite a unique experience for me working with another Dr. Sandhya. So we're Dr. Sandhya and Dr. Sandhya, but so I just work 3 mornings, Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning at Surrey Medical Centre, and find it very enjoyable there. So that's me.
Nice. Because that is the practice I go to as well. And
yes,
every time I get asked, which Sandhya do you want to see? But I never connected with you. So I always saw the senior Sandhya. So now
Yeah, she doesn't like being called the senior Sandhya. So.
I can
But the
understand
funny
that.
thing is, you wouldn't imagine how many times we've been asked by patients whether we're sisters. And we're like, our parents would have given us, we would have had different first names.
Yeah, it's a nice practice. And
It's a
I
very
would
nice
also like to
practice.
welcome our seniors here who have joined us today, Virender Uncle ji and Krishna Swami Uncle ji. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Nilma.
Virender ji, how have you been doing?
Well,
Yeah.
not the word.
All good. How have you been doing, Krishna Swami ji? You all good?
No problem.
That's nice. And you, Uncle ji, Virender Uncle ji?
Well, there's absolutely no problem. People, and especially Shanti Niwas, had been so very helpful by arranging so many programs for the day, for the evenings, and even for the groceries. I think it's a tremendous job. There's hardly any organization in New Zealand which I can think of who has cared so much for the seniors.
Thank you. Thank you. That's nice to hear.
It
That
is an excellent job. It is indeed.
Sandhya, I know that you have been in the forefront of this coronavirus information, and I think you were also involved in the group of doctors who actually pushed the government to get into the level 4 and things like that. Would you like to share a little bit of that journey with us, please?
Well, I suppose, as I've just mentioned, I have quite a varied background. My extended family, so all my cousins and everybody are mainly in Delhi. My husband's family, although their origin is Sri Lanka, they've been in my in-laws from Malaysia, although they live in Sydney. So we have family in India, in Malaysia, cousins and in the UK, in the US, and also being from Australia. I suppose I was in a bit of a unique position in that I really had my ear to the ground. So I think we were very aware of what threat was approaching New Zealand. Also, my older sister, who is an anaesthetist in Perth, I don't know if people sort of, what the problems happening with coronavirus is that the problems that it's creating is acute respiratory syndrome, and they require intubation and ventilation. So the doctors that are really on the front, that have been on the front line in terms of managing those, are the anaesthetists and the intensive care specialists, of which, my sister is obviously one of those as well. So obviously I had a lot of inside knowledge just because of my background. And I think that was actually quite relevant because it really gave me a worldview of what was going on, and I was watching very carefully. And I think as we started seeing what was happening and cases starting, what the whole thing is that because this was a new threat and nobody really knew much about it, there was a lot of information sharing going on. And a lot of this information sharing was happening sort of, whether it was in social media, like as we have, you would probably have a Facebook group for Shanti Niwas. There are now several Facebook groups of doctors. There's one, COVID doctors for Australia and New Zealand. There's one for New Zealand. I think there's for America. So we basically, there is just so much information sharing that's happening that I have always been of the impression that collective information is knowledge, that it shouldn't just be, it's basically a tsunami of information as people are trying to learn about the infection and what are the best practices to put in place to protect us and to protect our patients. And obviously it was very alarming for doctors as we started hearing that healthcare workers were dying. And so, it's a real threat. You like suddenly you sort of think, just in December, I organized a 20-year reunion for my medical school. But I was thinking 20 years ago when we were studying, or 25 years ago when I started studying, we just never thought that we were going to be at the forefront of a war. So that hit me very personally, because to me, I felt that could be me, that could be my husband, that could be my sister, that could be one of my friends, because that's the thing with doctors. Most of their family and friends are also doctors. So I was feeling it very personally, because this talk about doctors being heroes, it's that nobody actually wants to be a hero. We don't want to be highlighted, oh, you're an amazing hero, because we don't actually want to die. I mean, we took an oath to do no harm to others, but we didn't take an oath to do harm to ourselves. So as we're going through this journey, first and foremost, it became very evident that the biggest challenge was to educate people, to explain to them. We realized, I mean, as things were happening in China, and in China, the thing was, because of the political nature of the place being a communist country, they could enforce such a serious lockdown. Now, in a democratic nation, it's much harder to do. I mean, they were doing things like welding the doors. We were hearing crazy things, but I think human nature is to try and shut things out, whereas most doctors, and I can speak for myself, are very risk averse. By nature, we are risk analysts. Every decision we make, we are weighing up risk versus benefit. So everything you're looking at in that point of view. Now, a politician, so a doctor's point of view is always going to be different from a politician's point of view. So the challenge was twofold. It was that people were basically saying, look, doctors are heroes, healthcare workers are heroes, but hang on a second, healthcare workers are dying. They're not being protected adequately. Actually, the real hero is the one that actually can save lives, are governments. Because if they put the correct policies in place and they follow the advice of medical experts, then more lives can be saved by the healthcare workers. Because basically the problem is, and what happened in all these countries where the death toll has been massive, is that the healthcare system has got overwhelmed. So the point that we were trying to make, and this happened in this. So as we saw that that we were tracking, like particularly I was watching Australia, the numbers were tracking very high, and the government sort of wasn't bringing a big lockdown. New Zealand, we could just sort of see. I think it was the weekend before they actually ended up announcing the lockdown, and we could just see the numbers were just could have been spiraling out of control. So although there had been one petition that had been put through by a intensive care specialist, that hadn't received, it had come in the news, but I think a nursing body had come out against that because they were calling for a lockdown. So I'd sort of spoken to my husband. It was a Saturday evening, and we were this was the Saturday evening before the lockdown was actually announced, I think, which was the 23rd of March. So this was on the 21st, and my husband was actually on call for that weekend for the hospital. And I said, we've got to do something. This is crazy. And he was like, yeah, this is crazy. We're on track for a disaster. So he penned a letter talking to several other colleagues, and basically what they looked at with the help of some of the other intensivists is what the modelling sort of was and how many ICU beds we actually had, and that if we called for lockdown, if we didn't call for a complete lockdown, because at that stage we were only in level 2, then the New Zealand healthcare system would be overwhelmed and a lot more people would die. So he did that, and by pretty much the Sunday evening, we had he made a Google document, and only New Zealand doctors with their medical registration number could sign it. And I think by Sunday evening, he had about 1,600 signatures just through social media and calling and WhatsApping and texting. We sent it, and people forwarded it on to junior doctors, anybody. And he managed, through his talking, to get in through to the Prime Minister's office. Also, Kanwaljit Bakshiji, we spoke to him. We had his contact. He's on my Facebook, and and he gave us some contacts as well. He got my husband in touch with the health minister, and by the Monday morning, he had 2,500 signatures, and he actually, at 4 o'clock in the morning, my husband had been called in for an emergency dissection, which that operation takes 6-7 hours. And after getting out of that operation at 10 o'clock in the morning, he just was on the phone and on the email to the Prime Minister's office. And then I think at 1 o'clock, she made the lockdown announcement. And one of the things my husband said was, look, if we call the lockdown, then, you know, I mean, he kept on saying we need to use this window of opportunity. Now that the borders are closed, we need to close lockdown so we can get control of what the cases are here. And you know, that New Zealand is at a chance where we can have one of the best outcomes in the world. And so then she called the lockdown, and we were very happy. And my husband was totally very taken by surprise when he got a call from the Chief of Staff of Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to actually thank him soon after the lockdown was called, to say thank you for delivering that message, and that perhaps history will never know the role the doctors played. And I mean, that's absolutely fine, because the government is doing the right thing, the government is listening. And but one thing is that I think people don't realise why doctors are so invested is that, you know, we are not only working on the front line, we are driving political policy as well, because we are the ones that are used to evaluating information, evidence, and we're the ones that are, you know, have most at stake, I would say, you know. And by nature, our nature is that we want to save lives. You know, the main thing that drives me is that if anything I post, if any information I can share, if it can save one life, if it can change one mind, which can lead to saving one life or saving the toil of one doctor, then that effort is worthwhile, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and only together we can fight this. So, you know, look, it's been very encouraging. Mind you, once we got that, and I was relieved, but Australia still hadn't shut down. So then I turned my focus to Australia and started.
That's actually really, really very nice to know that, you know, some of our own people were involved in this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So many people have been. I mean,
yeah.
there was just that article about Dr. Aisha Veral, and I think she's from the Maldives. What an amazing effort. I think similar, like, I mean, I couldn't sleep for days, and there was that article in the paper, and since January, she couldn't sleep properly. And I think there was something they said for 6 days, she basically handed her baby over to her husband, and she self-motivated wrote that report on contact tracing, which they were kept on quoting about what they were looking at to decide about coming down to level 3. And can you imagine, it's doctors that have taken the responsibility on themselves in their own time to make these recommendations to government. But secondly, it's government actually taking those recommendations seriously. So it takes two to tango, you know, and so we are so lucky that we are living in a country where that relationship is working. But again, there are still contentions. I mean, today I just read about 2 you know, healthcare workers at Waitakere Hospital got infected. Now, so again, you know, there's always a balance between personal protective equipment and, you know, the quantity that's available, and then what is the evidence. You know, doctors would say, well, go overboard with safety. Why would you not? But the policymakers have to look at economics on anything. They have to look at the general economics plus the economics of how much supply they've got. But for us, you know, if you put in a lockdown, like, to me, lockdown is primary prevention. If you can close the country, if you can stop the spread, then hopefully you minimize the duration which the economy is actually in stasis, which is exactly what New Zealand has done.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be one of the first economies to recover. So, you know, complaining about people getting depressed and complaining about increased rates of suicide, yes, they are concerning, but there was a beautiful video by the governor of the mayor Cuomo of New York, and he said, yes, you know, all those concerns are concerning, but they don't equal death. Yeah. You know, they're not the same as the risk of death. So look, we're very lucky, and I think, you know, we haven't won this battle yet, but I think we are. I think I made a post just, you know, a few days ago when we were just coming down on Facebook from lockdown, is that I think we're past the eye of the storm. Before, at that time when we wrote that letter, I was posting, this is the calm before the storm. You know, this is the calm before. So all the doctors were just sitting there thinking, we're about to get hit bad. Do you know what I mean? So we're like, I'm relieved, but still, you know, it's going to be an ongoing battle because
I know it's a long journey ahead of us still. That's what
long
our
journey
Prime
ahead of
Minister
us. But what
says.
we have in our favor is that we're an island nation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, we could have closed the borders well, you know, before all of this happened. We could have done that. But again, governments will never want to close borders preemptively. Do you know?
Hey, Sandhya, can I just pass it on to, thank you so much for this information. I think it was really nice. I know I can just keep on hearing to this, but
That's
we
all
just
right.
have very limited time.
That's okay.
And
That's
I
okay.
just
Please
want
go.
the two gentlemen here to ask some
Yeah.
questions or just have
Yeah.
some input into this conversation as well.
Yeah.
Virenderji, do you
Yeah.
do you have anything to
So much
add or ask?
Sandhya. And we never knew that so much background, what has happened and how the
Mm.
police has worked and how much New Zealand doctors have worked for it. I have my son is a doctor, my grandson is a doctor, and I know the tribulations what we go on
Yeah.
when they have to go every day to the hospitals.
Yeah.
My son is working in Canberra. He's a gastroenterologist.
In Canberra, in Australia.
He was in Sydney before.
Oh,
Dr.
wonderful.
Vipul, and my grandson is here, my sister's, my daughter's son.
Yeah.
So he.
Well, Canberra had the lovely news of being the first region in Australia. I just read last night that is COVID free.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, I
So
talked to him today.
they've done
And
fantastically well.
great achievement, and I definitely value the doctors who have been doing it and the government who has taken their advice in earnest. And that is one of the reasons that New Zealand can stand proudly in the whole world and say
Exactly.
that we have done it very well. And I've been talking to my friends in Canada, in America, and in India, and all other countries. And they're citing Jacinda like anything everywhere she's in the news.
Yeah.
And we are very lucky that we are in a country like this.
Yes.
That is one thing. And secondly, many times we, our own people, when we are within the house premises, when a lot of things there, you're washing your hand 20 times or 20 seconds and so many times. Is it very necessary when we are living within the house premises and you're not going out or touching anything outside? Is it absolutely necessary that way the precaution what is being circulated for the older people who are in the house?
I think the thing to remember is that, to answer your question simply, no, not constantly washing your hands. But what I would say is that probably the time where you're most at risk is when you're going to eat or at any time touching your face, or if you're taking anything out of the pantry or the fridge. So one of the biggest things is how you manage the groceries. When you are getting the groceries delivered, how you are making sure that they are clean. So knowing that that information, which I think is available and I can share with you guys as well, of how long coronavirus lasts on various surfaces. So I think, you know, things like steel, it's 3 days, and plastic, you know, 3 to 5 days. So what I do, for example, is, you know, any groceries that come in, if they're non-perishable items that you don't need to touch, you know, like cereal boxes, etc., just leave them in the, you know, the garage or a particular part of the house for a couple of days, or, you know, remove the packets from inside. But anything that you're putting into your fridge, or should it be fresh produce, straight away wash it in, you know, a little bit of water with detergent and dry it, and then put it away. And then you don't have to worry so much when you're taking things, you know, outside of the fridge, whether it's the milk bottle or whether it's the yogurt. And also but it's just a good practice that before you eat, the last thing you do is just wash your hands, you know, because, but obviously it's not something to be paranoid about at home. And obviously, you know, if you're handling anything, whether you've gone in the car or you've been out and come back, then of course it's important. But, you know, I suppose you're mainly staying at home. But that's what I would say. It's mainly being conscious about touching your face. But no, I mean, it's not like every 5 minutes I've got to go wash my hands. No.
We touching our face, nose, or thing it goes inadvertently. We don't make it a point to touch it. It all of a sudden it has been your reflexes that.
Yeah, but what you've got to think about is that you're not actually, in your home environment, there shouldn't be, because you're cleaning surfaces frequently, unless there's somebody sick in your house who has COVID or suspected of having COVID, then there shouldn't be extra germs running around. Do you know what I mean? That you're going to touch a surface and you're just going to get it because you're doing your regular cleaning. And in your high frequency areas, should it be your switch or your doorknob, I mean, you can just get, what actually is useful is, and another thing which I hope you've shared with your Shanti Niwas group is how to make up solutions. And what I find really useful is, diluting that bleach, but putting it in a bleach, or whether it's even actually, I just found the Glen 20 spray is quite good, but putting it in a spray bottle, because the spray bottle makes it much easier to clean groceries or clean window, or you just have one in the bathroom so that you just clean the sink around. And it's a much easier way than trying to use wipes or anything like that. It's a much more practical way. So I shared that with my own mother-in-law, and when she gets her grocery packs, she says she now just puts a towel down and she in the laundry and just sort of sprays them and wipes them down, and better for the environment too. And so again, if you're doing all those precautions, if you're trying to think about where could the virus be carried home. So for example, when I come back from work, obviously I'm being very careful about, if you go for grocery shopping, for example, or you go outside for a walk, just stick to the 1 or 2 pairs of shoes that you use and keep them outside, because theoretically COVID can come on the shoe. And then wash your hands properly, but keep them outside the house. Don't track them around the house so that suddenly, where I sit down on the carpet, maybe I touch and that there might be. So rather than getting sort of obsessed about it, think about it in a scientific terms. Yeah, that's the only way I can.
Good point that you have this in a spray bottle, because my wife does. She takes a swipe and then puts all the knobs in the morning and in the night while cleaning and clothing.
It's much easier in a spray bottle. So what I did was I just, and if you look, and I can share an article with you about that as well, is just, it's just so much easier. Or even Dettol. Dettol is perfect. And now it's freely available, and it's actually got the instructions on the Dettol, whether you use it neat, but you only need like a cap or so. And I just bought and now I think Bunnings and all these places are available like to order online. And, you can have the measure of, 500 mils, and it lasts a long time. A small bit goes a long way. And then just
sorry, I'm running out of time.
Okay.
And Krishna Swamiji, do you want to very quickly add
Nilma,
something?
this shoe suggestion is also very good. We have never taken this into account, that when we come out of somebody has gone for and all, and leave the shoes outside.
That's something I will do now from today. Actually, I haven't done that before after I came back from work.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya.
Do you want to add something? Krishna Swamiji?
I would just want to have, 2 or 3 things. One is, has the government got any plans to do any about the vaccine in New Zealand?
I think there is research projects taking place. I was just reading today, and so I think all governments are, sweating over a vaccine. I just don't think it's going to come easily. I think it's not just, I think New Zealand government is also participating in trials as to treatments. So there's, so because any vaccine development takes a long time. So it's not, I don't think realistically anything's going to happen before 18 months to 2 years, if that. So, you have to look at also, there are promising antiviral agents that are working. But I think the key thing is that we're lucky in New Zealand that the healthcare system hasn't been overwhelmed. That means that doctors and healthcare workers have the resources, should you get sick, to treat you quickly. I have made a 5-minute YouTube video, which hopefully they'll share, in which it's very important to maintain a healthy immune system, number one, okay? And for that, basically, the important things is eating well, eating mainly vegetables, fruits, not packaged foods, processed foods, fatty foods, getting good sleep, keeping your anxiety levels down, so meditation, yoga, very important, and also being connected with your loved ones. So this is fantastic. This, Shanti Niwas, what you're doing is fantastic. You are improving the immunity of our elderly. by keeping them connected. And this is your best defense. On top of that, in my video, I have given some tips if you do get a cold, how you can start fighting it straight away, and how you can try and reduce the chance of getting sick, whether it be COVID, whether it just be a cold or a flu, and hopefully that will help protect you this winter. And I'm always available for any questions and any other episodes.
Looks like, Sandhya, we need to do one more session with you. I think
yeah, no
time
problem.
is just not
Love
enough.
to.
Sorry if I have been cutting short.
No, absolutely not.
Hemant has been texting me the timing which is going on.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
And we will definitely like to have you back on our show. With
I'd love to.
Yeah,
Be my pleasure.
I think we need more session. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes, wonderful.
I'm full of information. Don't worry.
It was really very lovely hearing you and such good information. Definitely we'll have you back.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for the wonderful job you guys are doing. And don't worry, you're in New Zealand. You're safe.
Thank you so much.
Because you people are around.
Yes, thank you, Virendraji and Krishna Swamiji, your questions that you have asked, and also the information Dr. Sandhya has provided. As she mentioned that she's got some of these videos that we would like to host on Shanti Niwas Facebook page and through our WhatsApp group, so those messages can get out, how we can utilize those tips that Dr. Sandhya has been given. So has been giving to us. So thank you so much, Nilimaji and everybody, and we hope to continue the series Sabka Saath Hai for Shanti Niwas members in coming days through our social media channel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nilima.